it's Sammy for another episode of the IdOMUSIC podcast, and our goal and our mission is to empower and educate musicians and artists worldwide. Welcome to the IdOMUSIC podcast. Today we talked to Courtney Sills, who is a former manager for Killer Mike, previous VP of Equimini and Purple Ribbon Records for Outkast, also discovered Yellow Wolf, and on today's episode we discussed going from barbering to managing an act like 112, the significance of working with family, and working with young talent like Cap G. Hey, it's Sammy Approved for another episode of the IdOMUSIC podcast, and I'm sitting with music extraordinaire, executive bear, Courtney Sills.
Extraordinaire executive, oh my.
Aren't you?
And I'm sitting here with Sammy for the IdOMUSIC podcast. What a blessing. I'm humbled. Thank you for having me.
Shout out Southside, College Park.
You don't know nothing about that. Cut it out now.
What?
Who told her something about that?
I'm from here, born and raised.
Right?
So it's always a pleasure to sit with those that grew here.
Yeah, definitely kind of homegrown.
Yeah.
I was born in Anniston, Alabama. Mm-hmm. That's where my family is from. Part of my family, my mother's side, is from Anniston, Alabama. I was born there on a military base because my father was a Marine. And my father's side of the family is from Connecticut. So we moved here when I was in the second grade. So I'm from here.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I mean, you also had a lot to do with managing a lot of the talent that also came out of the city and grew here as well. From the likes of 112. We know that you were a pivotal or a major part in their career, or their careers rather. Is that how you started in the industry? What was your first taste of music in the music business?
My first taste in the entertainment business was I was sought after because they considered me a plus size supermodel, and
really.
You can't see that?
Oh, I see. I'm just trying to get into the story. Let's just get into all of the things. So you were a well sought after plus size supermodel. What campaigns they had you going for?
Well, I refused that because I didn't want to be looked upon as a piece of meat. So
understood.
Right. So I decided to be a barber, and from high school I was barbering from like the 10th grade. I went to high school in College Park, and there was a couple of gentlemen that went to high school with me. I'm going to try to make this long story a little short. But Kevin Wells went to high school with me. He's upperclassman. And Dallas Austin went to high school with me. And myself and Divine Stevens and Tion Watkins. And we all kind of went to high school together in College Park, along with Jermaine Dupree, who was kind of from the other side, which back then on the south side, we didn't consider anything on the east side of Old National. We didn't consider that south side. That was like really Riverdale to us back in those days. Here lately, everybody claims the south side. Right. So lines have been changed. So at any rate, I had been cutting hair and or barbering, and at some point, I think 89, 90, maybe late 90s, Kevin Wells came out with a group called Another Bad Creation and called upon me to be their barber for a couple of photo shoots and a couple of promo tours. And that was my introduction into the music business, leaving Old National in all the trappings that Old National had at that time. Such as crack, cocaine, money, cash money, robbing, stealing, kidnapping, all the shit that comes along with selling cocaine. And when I got the call to come up to the studio, it was actually my first time coming to Northside Drive ever in my life. And me and my partners came to the studio. Of course, we had every firearm you could imagine because that's how we rolled. And it became apparent almost immediately that we didn't need our weapons. Mm-hmm. Like it was a totally different environment. So I started cutting hair there once or twice a week for whomever would come into the city to work with Dallas. And those names ranged from Will Smith, that was one of my clients. Busta Rhymes was one of my clients. Eric Sermon was one of my clients. A young dude named Puffy was one of my clients. Of course, every artist that came through the studio, Boyz II Men became one of my main clients. And at the time, they were huge. Mm-hmm. So that was my Tim and Bob, the producers, became my clients, as well as some of my best friends. Yeah. And every opportunity I had to sit, or for them to sit in my chair, afforded me a half an hour or so of one-on-one time to basically get whatever information they would share. And that knowledge, that information, that experience was really my classroom. Mm-hmm.
What sort of questions were you asking when you had that one-on-one time?
So y'all really ain't got to rob nobody? Like, really, you get paid to do this shit?
Because you were just completely unaware of, like, this entire space. You didn't have, like, family
I was just a hood dude who... And I say hood, but mind you, back then, College Park was middle class, maybe a little upper middle class, depending on where you're coming from. So it never was, like, bad times. The mentality of the South Side became fucked up based on drugs, based on a lot of people from L.A., Chicago, Detroit, Miami were moving into our community. So we were exposed to different cultures, which is, essentially where we won't get into that.
We can get into all of the things, though, Bear.
I mean, I'm saving that for my story.
Understood. Twinkle, twinkle. It's okay.
So in that, traveling with ABC, sometimes traveling with Boyz II Men, always being at video shoots, always being at photo shoots, and always being at the studio or in studio sessions, I was able to see things be created and then see it be presented to the world. At that time, there was a lot of artist development. So I was at rehearsals. It was just new, refreshing information. Yeah. Every single week. And I never planned on or never wanted to be in the music business at all. That was never my...
Yeah, it's funny that you started, I knew that you started barbering. I saw it on your LinkedIn. But...
I got a LinkedIn?
You do have a LinkedIn.
Okay.
I saw that, you started off barbering, but I hear that a lot of people who are in the entertainment business start off like cutting familiar faces and then eventually they find their way into the business. But for you, after being kind of curious and asking these questions, then it led you to getting your feet in the door. But then what did that look like for you? Like, it wasn't singing for you. It wasn't rapping for you. It became like the guy who's managing careers and affairs.
Well, to be honest with you, also to kind of go back, I also, being from College Park, there was a little guy who lived in the back of my neighborhood who we were friends, and his name was Richard Wingo. And once Tim and Bob was like, look, we're working on this Boyz II Men album, and we need a group of our own. And it was like, Bear, can you find us a group? And I was like, I guess, yeah, let me. By that time, most of the people on the South Side knew I was going to the studio, and there were no other studios. There were no other access to the music business. So people were coming to the barbershop frequently to audition. And
so you was running auditions in the barbershop?
Yes, man. I was highly sought after.
I love it.
If I'd have known what I know now, I would have been able to utilize that access to position myself a little better earlier. But I had no idea.
How would you have done that?
I would have got some paperwork done. I'd had some agreements signed before I did anything, before I took you anywhere, before I introduced you to the super producer Dallas Austin, or this incredible manager and visionary Kevin Wells, or these new producers Tim and Bob. You would have been signed to my production company.
Right.
Yeah, ain't no way you're gonna get to them through me, and then I find out later that I could have been compensated. That's a real job. So, so that being said, when Tim and Bob asked me to find them a group, I just went on the search for a group, and me and Wingo probably came across 20 groups. I had him probably in 6 different groups. And it almost became like, I can do this. Like, I can figure this out. And in that whole process, I'm learning, because Dallas is like turning down everything. Like, that ain't it. Tim and Bob like, K. Wells like, they cool. And you had to think at that time it was Boyz II Men and Jodeci, so everything was kind of compared to that. And there were high standards of what you had to have it. Right. In order for them to even consider it. You didn't have to have a demo. You didn't have to have a fucking videos. You didn't have to have streaming numbers or views or followers. You just had to have some talent, because everything else was going to be developed. Right. Different time, different day, a lot less pressure, a lot less ignorance, but more pure talent. You had to have some talent in order to even be, like, Dallas was a tough cookie, so, and we never cracked Dallas. He never was sold on 112 or Forte at the time. So it gave me a unique opportunity to learn a lot, especially from Eric Sermon, Busta Rhymes, and Puff. Like, what
sort of things? I mean, like you talked about too, just briefly, how a lot of people were moving from like different places, or you were being exposed to other cities and cultures, and like what they brought. What sort of information or like things did you learn from somebody like a Puff or a Busta, who were coming from a different space of like?
Well, those 3 individuals I named were from New York. The individuals I was talking about from other states was in high school. Sure. And they were like the South Florida guys who, as history would call them, the Miami boys. Right. And they would bring the cocaine. Then you had the Detroit niggas who was hustlers. And you had the Chicago niggas who were gang banging. Sure. And you had the LA niggas with the curls that was set tripping, like really on the crippin', you know what I mean?
I just think I use that as an example because I think even still over time you learn things from people, be it good or bad, you know, that they bring.
None of it's bad. All of it was information for me. So dealing with the New Yorkers who were all kind of famous, and to some, I mean, of course, Eric Sermon was famous. Of course, Busta Rhymes was famous, and he was about to embark on his solo career. Puffy wasn't famous, but had made some huge strides for working with Uptown. But what I noticed is that a lot of people thought that we were slow. Like, especially New Yorkers back then, it was like, it's easy pickings in Atlanta. For anybody who came from a Detroit or Chicago, LA, like, we were green, but we always had, from down south, we had a chip on our shoulders because we felt like we didn't have the respect from other people. And at that time, we didn't. We had to really earn it. We had to really grind through being Southern. Hip-hop was New York City. Mm-hmm. And if it wasn't approved by them, it wasn't shit. and L.A. is a whole different other world, you know? And I think the fact that New York kind of kept that grip for so long, it made L.A. be like, fuck y'all, we doing our own thing. It made Houston be like, fuck y'all, we doing it. It made Miami be like, we're going to create our own shit and we're going to support our own shit. We know y'all never going to give us the respect, New York, even though we want it. But now you've made us an enemy in terms of, and not an ally. Like, you're not a supporter, you're really a oppressor of our shit because we don't meet your standards. So that's really was, you know, at that time, when we weren't getting played on the radio in New York at all. So I learned a lot from them. I learned a lot, and I respect New Yorkers a lot because once I had the opportunity to live there over a long period of time, based on signing my first act to Bad Boy, I understand the difference on what it took to survive in New York City. What we take for granted down south is like some other shit for them.
Right, absolutely, I agree. What was the transition for you from full-time barbering to actually signing your first act or becoming the executive, essentially?
I didn't want to be in the music business again, and it took Kevin Wells, after finding the group Forte with Wingo, it took Kevin Wells to convince me that that's what I needed to do. And I just was totally turned off by what I felt like was the detachment from the reality of, or the real world meaning the streets, and the pressure I was getting even from my friends to keep it real or not go up there and fuck with them lames, and, you know, not knowing that the life that they were living seemed a lot less stressful to me than having to carry a pistol every day or having to wake up and hear that a friend had been murdered or a friend had been locked up and was getting 15 years or something. It just seemed like, you know, you mean to tell me you can be creative and dance and sing and it's really possible? Mm-hmm. Like, for real? And not, you know, you hear the stories, and you didn't hear as many stories back then because it wasn't the behind the music. It wasn't all that type of shit. You really had to be plugged in to hear the horror stories of the music business. So it was, I just wanted to be a talent scout. But K. Wells convinced me, you know, and I'll never forget that day, that he convinced me, like, no, you're going to do this. We're going to do this together, and it's going to change your life. And it absolutely did.
Nice. So, you mentioned that Dallas Austin was never convinced, though. So let me ask you, like, why you were sold with this group that you discovered and putting Forte together.
I can't say that I was sold. I could say that.
Or like, what made you believe that this was it? I mean, obviously, K. Wells, it was a big indicator for you to even, you know, put yourself out there for the entertainment business. But I'm curious to what was going on in your mind.
I was a student. So I would listen a lot and keep my mouth shut and compare my thoughts to what the creatives were thinking. Mm-hmm. And by the time that I found 112 or Forte, I had learned enough to kind of figure that if they didn't have everything that they were looking for, they had enough of the, say, it was 5 things. They had 3.5 of those 5 things, which was more than any of the other artists. So when I could tell how impressed they were by these guys being able to sit at a piano and play and harmonize and sing their hearts out effortlessly. Like, they had put the time in to really become good. They were crushing high school talent shows or any talent. They was crushing them. And that was evident. I don't know what Dallas was looking for, but he let it be known. And I'm glad he did. Like, which made the guys and myself work harder because we really wanted to prove ourselves to Dallas. And Dallas didn't end up writing or letting us record a song that he had written something when he was 16 years old. And somehow Puff heard it. It was a song called Never Fall in Love. And I think it might have been, Dallas, if you hear this or see this, I think the song was about Kim Porter.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. He wrote it when he was 16.
Wow.
Called Never Fall in Love. It was one verse that they sang twice to make a full song. You want me to sing it?
Yes.
You have to pay.
You got in some credit on songs.
Once we moved to New York in 94, 95, and just being in the studio every single day.
Before you go to New York, how was it? I mean, you said Puff ended up hearing the song, so that was essentially why he decided to sign. That was how the deal came about?
I ain't telling that whole story.
All right. I just have to ask.
Don't say something. Don't have Curtis looking at me like that, like he want to do something.
I just had to ask.
Saving some of my shit, man. Curtis a bully, man. Do your job, Gail. King. Snoop Dogg.
Yo, chill. We don't want none of that. We don't want none of the problems.
No, we don't want no smoke. Funky dog. What?
Okay, so we're not getting the full story of how
the Puff shit
went down. But you did get the deal with Bad Boy, and you moved to New York and started working in the studio every day.
First person I think we worked with, first or second person, was a guy named, first person I think might have been Gordon Chambers. Second person was Albie Shore, and at Quad Studios. And that's when we were like, first of all, we had been in the studio developing our strengths and finding out who we are. And I say we a lot because I feel like at that point, and still today, I'm part of the group. So having writers come in who we never worked with before, and just being totally, these were young kids still in high school in the room with Albie Shore and Kyle West, and them, playing songs for us and saying, we're going to record this song, and really following their lead. It was really like, again, like the best school a dude like me could have been to or been in. And it was just us five in New York really navigating through the heart of Manhattan. And it was a lot. And developing relationships with Biggie and Faith and Total and this young group that had a writer in it by the name of Missy Elliott and Craig Mack and the street team, Jay Black, and at that time, Bad Boy had one of the best street teams ever. Groovy Lou, the stylist, Sybil Penix. It was just a lot of creativity and incredibly fearless young black people with style and pizzazz and just, it was.
And you was there, writing songs like Cupid.
Yeah.
That's dope. I mean, I found out that you wrote a song recently on Justin Bieber's new album. Is that true?
Who is this? Anwar?
Nardwar.
Huh? Nardwar? What are you talking about?
Is it true?
Are you the police? When is this coming out? When is this podcast airing? Why is that nigga over there hiding behind the board? What's going on in here? Where did you get this information?
I'm just asking a question. Is it true?
Ain't God good, y'all?
Okay. So,
wow.
You're not going to answer?
Yes, it's true.
That's amazing. That's
it truly
awesome.
Is.
How was that experience? You just sent it over, or were you actually in the studio?
I think I'm going to say that story too.
Okay, bet. All right, well.
my manager, country boy Mike, keeps shooting spitballs at me. Like,
what would you say, I mean, from discovering talent in barbershops to barbering inside of studios, you really see and continue to see, even working with people like Cap G and, younger talent, or even, a friend like Killer Mike. What's so special about the city? Like, why do people crave like the sound, the talent, the sauce? Like, what is it? What would you say from the perspective of being from here and growing here?
That's a very good question.
Like, can you explain why this talent comes from the city, or what's so special about the executives that live here?
I can't. I'm gonna be honest with you. Atlanta might be upset with me, but until recently, like, I really have had not the best things to say about the executives from here. And the only reason why I say that is we have never come together, to my knowledge, and created a stronghold that could not be broken. And for me, that's problematic. Coming from living in New York and seeing New Yorkers have a sense of pride in the same struggles that they have for a great portion of their time. Now, I'll even say that they still on top now, only because most of the executives are New Yorkers. They're not people from Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And with as much as that's coming out of Atlanta, we have never come together and orchestrated or demonstrated our unity and our power from being unified and saying, this ain't happening, this is happening. We not letting this go down, this will go down. We've never done that. And that's why we continue to, we have historically been taken advantage of. And some of the most powerfully creative people are not in the positions that I feel that they should be today. Like a lot of the New Yorkers who put the work in the 90s are still in these offices signing and having the power to influence the culture, where a lot of the dudes down here who really contributed to the foundation of this city are not in those positions. And I just think, I got a problem with that. But
well, sister, do you think you have a solution?
Absolutely. And a lot of people aren't going to be happy with it, because it's going to take probably some people to get the shit slapped out of them. Honestly. Like, that's just what it is. And that doesn't necessarily mean literally get the shit slapped out of them, but there has to be a strong line pressed in order to know that you just can't come to Atlanta and take advantage. And we have to come together, especially the executives, because we have some pretty dope guys who've come from nothing to achieve some great things that I think are more prepared to create an atmosphere of this is our city. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You know what I mean? We have always, hell, look at this beautiful studio. I remember this studio was 2 blocks down and it was itsy bitsy and tiny. He not from here, period. But that's a salute to him. That's what I'm saying. Atlanta was green. Mm-hmm. Like, we didn't even, people have built empires in Atlanta, including L.A. and Babyface. Mm-hmm. And utilized the talent from here, the producers from here, and then what? Nobody's in these buildings. None of those people are in those buildings. To this day, I'm not saying they weren't at some point, but right now, who are making sure that the Atlanta culture is preserved and Like we've really become, we dress like, we look like every other city. Back in the 90s, you could tell if you was from Atlanta. Mm-hmm. Period. You could tell if you was from LA. You could tell if you was from New York. Now everybody dresses alike. We don't have no culture no more. There's nobody, no gatekeepers. I don't know if that's growth. I don't know if that's evolution. I don't know if it's to be applauded. But when you say, why did people flock here? Why did they? That's a question for people not from here. Why did you flock here? And is what you were looking for still here today?
Right.
Or has it been watered down?
Yeah. I think it's a combination of things. I think it's definitely evolution. I also think and believe that, you know, when Atlanta becomes this sort of melting pot of things, and you have the Bears and the Bams and the, you know, people I know still here who are trying to do their part in preserving the culture, you know, it's a little more difficult, but their pockets. That's a good conversation.
I believe that too. Shout out to QC. Shout out to Fly and TIG. I'm always going to honor and support my brothers from Generation Now. None of them are from Atlanta, but they've been here for a long time. Mm-hmm. Shout out to Curtis and Patchwerk. You know what I mean? Obviously, I'm going to take my hat off and salute the big homies, the legendary Jermaine Dupri and Dallas Austin, who are the inspiration and motivation to so many of us. Yeah. You know what I mean? So we've always had a point to prove. Somewhere, somehow, it became everyone got on some self shit. I'm going to build my shit. You going to build your shit. We ain't really fucking with each other like that. You know, the whole jealousy, envy, and, you know, people falling for the weaker, lower self, their fleshly self, and saying, I want to be the king of Atlanta. And to be honest with you, it's easy to be the king of Atlanta. Mm-hmm. It's hard to be the king of L.A. It's hard to be the king of New York. It's easy to be the king of Atlanta. It's easy to have 5 acres. It's easy to have a big-ass house and cars. It's Atlanta. Mm-hmm. You can't do that shit in L.A. Costs too much. Can't do it in New York. It costs too much.
There's no space.
There ain't no space.
Yeah. I gotta ask you, because you've been a pivotal part of a lot of people's careers, and I'm sure people, you know, have heard the name Bear, heard the name Courtney.
I don't think they have. That's why I'm humbled to be here.
Exactly.
Thank you for having me.
But if they have, they've at least known some of the careers that you touched, for sure. And so I have a question: is like, how do you determine, or how did you learn to determine who to work or invest in? Because at the core of it, if it's not a financial investment, it's definitely your time. And your energy, especially on the management side. I have a lot of conversations with managers who sit with me and talk about like what it takes to really, especially during that time of like developing an artist and like really doing the work, you know? Like now it's a little bit different, obviously, but you still are investing in artists' lives. Like I mentioned Cap G, who's also from the South Side, yeah, and is doing College Park.
That's my guy too. I have to salute him, man. That's a tough guy, man. He comes from good stock, good family, great people, and super talented. And I just love that dude and respect him a lot for the work that he puts in and the type of person that he is.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Yeah, he's a real good guy. And I just, you know, I hope the best for him to have lasted this long and continuing to elevate is dope. I would prefer him to take the long route as opposed to exploding and coming down.
Right.
You know what I mean? I think he'll have a long career because he gives something special to not only Atlanta but the Latino and Spanish community. Like it's so dope. It's opened my eyes to a whole nother culture as well. So in terms of finding or identifying artists, that is probably the one question that my partner, Mike Allen from All In Films, asked a lot in the few years he and I have been working together. And I've come to the realization that I don't know it all, and there's been several artists that I maybe had an opportunity to do business with and I didn't see it. You know what I mean? And I'm not even mad at it because it makes me understand why Dallas didn't sign Outkast. You know what I mean? Why Jermaine didn't sign this or why, you know what I mean? It's like I didn't see it. But once, what I've learned is you don't have to be the most talented. You just have to be willing to work hard. Mm-hmm. And that is now what I guess I'm looking for, work ethic. And also identifying their strengths and their weaknesses from a character place. Because once you see the character of a man or a woman, once you're looking for it, I've been in this game long enough to see people go way up, and go way down. I've seen multi-platinum artists sell out shows, sell out tours. I've seen the biggest of the big become not relevant. Mm-hmm. So in that, I now am able to not be caught up in the hype of anything, but really be able to specify or be focused on what's that character like and how is their ego, their arrogance gonna play out.
So are you saying that you believe that the ebbs and flows or sometimes the decline of an artist's career usually comes from their character or ego? Absolutely. Is that something that you've witnessed firsthand?
Oh, all day long, forever. Mm-hmm. Forever. You really have to have a certain mindset to have a successful career. Mm-hmm. And that means back in the day it might have been 5 to 7 years. Now it's anything over 3 or 4 years. Mm-hmm. Like to really have a successful career, because there's a lot more money available now. And you can get a lot more money, but do you have the information to sustain over 20 years? Or do you have the information to continue to grow and to build over 20 years? Do you have the mindset or the character and integrity to understand that the people that you don't know are and when I say don't know, like the people behind the scenes, are as important as the people in front of the camera, if not more important. What I've seen over the years, and we can use this particular establishment as the point. Like, I'm sure Curtis and Patchwerk have seen thousands of artists come and go. Thousands of artists come in here and think that they are the absolute shit and they will be the biggest thing ever to exist. And where are they now? Mm-hmm. And that's not that you shouldn't believe in yourself, not that you shouldn't be confident. Hell, T.I. was probably one of the most confident motherfuckers ever. But you can tell from the information, his ability to learn, you know what I mean, and his code of ethics, his character, who he is. That's what caused him to understand how to plant good seeds, how to make allies, how to stand up for himself, how to stand for something and in a respectful and reputable way. Not that we won't have our own issues and downfalls and shortcomings, but his ability to be resilient and persevere through lets the others know, we can depend on him being of value.
Absolutely. So we're kind of running over time, but I do need to ask a few questions regarding, like, you mentioned early on in the podcast that you hadn't established, or you wish that you established like your own company, essentially like your own production company where you're signing talent. But now, or eventually you did Sills Entertainment, and you worked directly with your twin sister. How was it working with family? Also your cousin, you helped like discover or bring him into the music business as a producer who's gone on to do amazing things. Pooh Bear. Is Bear like a family? Are those family names? Just curious.
Yeah, I think that first of all I've always had Sills Entertainment, and I use that name because it was always pressed upon me by my grandfather the importance of our family name and our legacy. And I was blessed with two sons, three sons. One is a stepson, Corey, and two sons, Josiah and Courtney, that will carry on the Sills name, and that's part of their legacy now. C. Sills Publishing, which I've had both of those since I think 95 or 96, but starting a record label / production company here recently called No Face, No Case. I'm super excited about, which I teamed up with my other cousin, play cousin, Fresh Stacks from College Park, and I'm just excited about that. But my sister was always a genius. Like, she was always a straight A student, graduated from Howard with honors.
Nice. I went to Howard.
Yeah, HU. And so at very early on, I realized her organizational skills was far surpassed mine. And she just started helping me. And she became a pivotal part, an intricate part of me being able to work effectively and efficiently, because she was a numbers person, still is a numbers person, and really could break down budgets and explain to me certain shortcomings and shortfalls and where we could save money or where we would need to make some adjustments. So then my cousin Pooh Bear, who is my mother's sister's son, they moved down here in 89, 90, around the time that ABC took off. And of course, with me barbering and being around them, he was inspired and motivated to want to sing and be in a group. And he was a terrible singer. He couldn't sing at all. And but he never stopped. And I didn't see that. I didn't see that in him. But he continued to do his thing, and been in a couple of groups and developed over years. Like, I think he might have started when he was 10.
Wow.
And I didn't. I remember Duran calling me. Duran, who is a member of 112 and the producer, called me one day, this before cell phones. I think we was all beepers. And said, I got this song, I want you to hear it. And he kind of was playing the piano and singing it for me over the phone. He said, yeah, I kind of got the hook in the verse out there. I'm thinking this shit's hard. I said, well, let me send my little cousin over there. And at the time, he was 14, 15 years old. And I don't know how Pooh Bear got over to Duran's house, but next thing I know, they had a record called Anywhere. And that was the first record. Pooh Bear was still a student at Tri-Cities High School.
Wow.
That came out. And there's no way you could have told me that Pooh Bear would be where he is today. And it's such an incredible feeling to see his success. It's also warming to my heart and humbling to hear him tell people that if it wasn't for me, you know what I mean, to plant that seed and be that inspiration, to be whatever I've been able to be to my sister, and getting her in this business of music and entertainment, and several of her scholarly friends as well, and several of my close homies and friends from the South Side to bring them into this business, and they still be contributing today. And my experiences afford me to do consulting for different record companies and executives, and sometimes have to step in on certain street shit, as well.
Yeah, speaking of, I wanted to ask you, just like to kind of close this out. I know that you have a lot of endeavors that you've been a part of. No Face, No Case is something that you mentioned that you're currently, your current label in entertainment. It's a record label.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously 2 Chainz just put out an album called No Face, No Case with True.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really know the situation specifically, but I am curious to know, like, how does that work? Like, are you trademarked? Is like the paperwork on? Like, is there any like sort of conflict there in terms of him utilizing the name? Because I went to the show and I thought that they said that they had a record label and that was the name of it as well. So I was just confused.
Where were you at in the show? Were you in the front?
No, I was not. I'm never in the front.
I thought I saw you. I thought I shined a light on you. But that's I'm kind of glad you asked me that. I'm going to hold back a little bit, but based on who I am as a man, and how I conduct myself, and knowing my purpose, outside of.
What's your purpose?
To teach, to be an example for my little homies, the young people who come up under me. And I'm always about communication. And as much as I'm about respect, I have a lot of self-respect as well. So if I'm in a position where I could react off of emotion, and I do, I set an example. But if I'm in a position where I'm angry and I don't react off my emotion and I choose to communicate effectively, and me and this person not agree, there's a way to not take it to the streets.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Absolutely, because I've seen it. Like Biggie was a friend of mine. So I've seen misunderstandings. I've seen toxins grow in people for no reason other than no one sat down and had a conversation. But what I've learned recently is that some people don't have the ability to say, I'm sorry, I'm wrong, or how can we fix it?
Right.
Some people don't have that. I do. And I really don't have I have my hat goes off to 2 Chainz, and he's an incredible artist. He represents the South Side well. He signed a couple of my homeboys and my little homies, Schoolie and World from 4 Seasons, and the little homie from College Park, a couple of homies from College Park. I have to applaud his efforts and know that certain shit might happen that we don't agree on. And at the end of the day, I'm not going to do anything to negatively affect his efforts, because he's my little homie too.
Right.
So at the end of the day, I do expect certain things from certain people, and that's one of them. And I'm just glad that he's able to help my little homies put some records out and hopefully see their dreams. But for lack of a better word, we'll say conflict resolution is one of my purposes.
Yeah. I think that's important that you do shed light on that, and so that's why I had to ask the question. I don't really care for the controversy myself. Neither here nor there. I wish we had more time.
Ain't no egos. No egos. If you got an ego, I really don't fuck with you, to be honest with you, because you can't see things clearly.
Right.
And we are all human.
Right.
And I've seen the toughest of the tough not be here no more because of the lack of willingness to adjust.
And resolve, yeah.
And resolve, because everything's momentary. It's just for now.
Right.
A month from now, I won't be thinking about that shit.
Facts. So I'm sure there are major things in the works for Bear and the future of Sills Entertainment, as well as No Face, No Case. I'm excited to see it. I wanted to ask you about All In and the films that you seem like you are working with Mike, or you said your partner Mike, so I'm sure there's something in that. But I'm going to allow you to tell the rest of your story
Thank you.
at another time.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Make sure that they...
I appreciate that. My brother convinced me after years and years that I might need to tell my story.
Absolutely. You have a lot of knowledge to share and to fulfill that purpose. So I can't wait to listen. Absolutely.
I appreciate
Very
that.
entertaining.
I just got to learn how to talk. You really had got me hot in here a little bit, but...
It's okay. We're going to cool on off.
Yeah, we're going to cool on off.
Tell them where they can find you on social media if you're on social media.
Yeah, follow me. First of all, follow on No Face, No Case, the label. It's NFNC, the label, on Instagram. And you can follow me at Higher Level Bear. Higher, Higher, level, Level, Bear on Instagram. And just support, man. Just support. And watch me on this journey and us on this journey of self-improvement. Health is wealth. I need y'all to get out here and eat a little bit better and get some exercise, because none of this shit means anything if you're in the ground.
Absolutely.
100%. And then I'd like to applaud you.
Thank you.
Because you were a great interviewer.
Thank you.
And your journalism, your research and homework was amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And the beautiful Patchwerk, thank you for having me.
Yes.
And although I didn't get my rider requirements,
whatever,
I asked for the Bobby Brown rider.
we got you on a part two. As always, well, thank you, Bear, for sitting down with me. As always, you guys can find this podcast at IDM Podcast on all social media platforms, as well as myself at Sammy Approved. And thank you for tuning in.
Sammy, you are approved.
Thank you.
Sonically superior.